Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ishita, and I'm a project manager working with Institute PIIU. Welcome to this very first session of WiTaR's Lunch Salon, which has been relaunched today. You may know that WiTaR Working Group is committed to fostering gender diversity and inclusion in the field of telecommunications and research. And the aim of this Lunch Salon initiative is to create a platform where people from different projects and different disciplines, they can come together and engage in like meaningful discussions which are related to diversity and inclusion and share their insights in a very open, informal manner. So that's how we started with this idea. And today we have our very first speaker, Akshay, who kindly volunteered to share his views and to share more about how diversity and inclusivity is important in technology and how it will lead us to shape the future of technology. So we have Akshay with us, who is a radio research scientist at Nokia Bell Labs. And the floor is yours, Akshay. We are eager to hear your perspectives.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot, Ishita, and the entire WiTaR community for this opportunity. So I'm Akshay. I joined Bell Labs, but I've been in the area of telecommunications since my bachelor's, and it's been almost 15 to 16 years in this entire area. And I've had a huge influence from different cultures because I did my bachelor's in India and schooling in India. Then I lived for 3 years in the United States where I did my master's. I ran a startup, and then due to some unfortunate events, had to close that startup. And then I moved to Barcelona in Spain, where I spent nearly 25% of my life studying, doing my PhD, then postdoc, and then working there. And again, meeting, Barcelona being such a diverse city, meeting people from different countries and continents, and then eventually, during my stay there, I had the opportunity to stay in and work in UK and Germany, and then move to Finland. So, I mean, I've lived and worked in 6 or 7 different countries, but there's something very common that I saw was the lack of numbers of women in tech or women in telecommunications and research. Although I have to say that some of my most some of my inspirations or inspirational figures have been women because I had a chemistry teacher who actually encouraged me to think differently to what others used to think when I was at school, and that kind of instilled that thought that you could think boldly even when you're at school, when everyone else was actually going in a certain direction, that you need to just get the answer right to get a high score so that you could get a good university. And then, of course, my PhD advisor was also a woman who was instrumental in helping me get my PhD. So, the reason I explained I brought this up was because over the past week, I had some really interesting conversations here when WiTaR posted this on LinkedIn. I had some interesting conversations initiated by some of my colleagues asking like, why, not in a bad way, but in a very inquisitive way, that why does a male need to be presenting in such a forum? Why a male is presenting in such a forum, and what is your target audience? And that to me is a very interesting question because, it opened a really nice conversation that, it's not just a question of women speaking for women in tech or research or anywhere else in any walk of life. It's a question of any human being with a certain level of common sense being able to speak up for what is right and what is just. And then, you start to think about it like, okay, common sense says that I am the same as what the other person is. It's just a case of, everyone comes with their own challenges, their own problems, their own issues, and then there needs to be a nuanced understanding of everything so that nobody feels different, but everybody feels welcomed in their own way. And I really appreciate that my colleagues brought this question up to me because I was able to sort of find the right motivation. I mean, I had the slide for it, but then it very beautifully has led me into my first slide, which is um, like, who's my inspiration? And I really admire this woman. She's you might have guessed she's Marie Curie. Uh, she is a two-time Nobel Prize winner, but more than that, she did that when it wasn't even considered legit for women to be in this area for some reason. I mean, it's such a sad thing that you have such smart people, but they were just held back due to social pressures. And that's why I really admire her because she challenged stereotypes in a time when you had all these social pressures where women were generally not considered to belong to science and technology, and it is today still male dominated, unfortunately, and back then it was even worse. um, but there are other reasons that she is really inspirational for me, and one of them is that she fundamentally changed how we look at science, especially radioactivity. And I myself, uh, I received the Marie Curie scholarship, so there is a sentimental value attached to her. Um, so, when you think about it, there are women who have fundamentally impacted how our lives are today. You purchase electricity contracts, which are based on nuclear power. You have to think about Marie Curie, how she understood radioactivity and how she changed it. So I always speak to my wife and I'm like, there was a woman behind all of this. And it's just, it gives me goosebumps when I even mention it right now. So, and this was 100 years ago. So just imagine, right? So, I mean, when we talk about inspirations, naturally the thing is, um, we get inspired by people who fundamentally impact our lives. And then the question is that how do we define impact, right? I mean, or success in that sense. And the thing is that in the modern era, we all work in teams. And so somebody who impacts the team objectives or provides new directions, which is innovation, you know, or impacts the team culture and ethics in a positive way, is the one whom you can. And this is not a non-exhaustive list, but I've tried to, sort of put it in a very broad structure because we don't want to get into the specifics, but rather the idea of like, how do you define impact? But then one has to remember that impact is gender agnostic. You can't think that, impact can only be generated by one gender or another or one minority and not by the other. It is gender agnostic. It is, agnostic to anything else. It's just based on a person. A person can generate all of these things, one of these things, and they can generate impact. So we have to think about it in that way first. And then we have to think about, well, okay, now that you have defined success or you have defined impact, what are the catalysts for it? And this is twofold. One could be at the, let me just take a pointer. One could be at the individual level. And this is very easy to define that, somebody who's very determined, who can work hard, who can do smart work and all of these things. And you can add more and more adjectives over there. And, you could come up with like maybe an entire slide or 10 slides worth of adjectives that how an individual can have certain characteristics for success. But then there is another thing that has to be thought about, like Marie Curie didn't have it, but in this day and age, leadership matters a lot because the way a leader develops the team culture and the kind of work that the leader provides profoundly impacts how an individual is able to tap into each of these avenues to be successful, like smart work, hard work, determination. So that's where I wanted to come to, like, how does one become a pillar of success? And the whole point about talking about team culture and challenging work is that if you don't make the culture safe, I mean, as I point out here, that this is a critical enabler to making somebody successful. And again, please remember that I'm talking about it from a purely gender agnostic fashion because the entire idea is that everyone is the same. We are starting in terms of work, in terms of workplace environment. But then the whole point is that when we talk about challenging work and team culture, what it tries to ensure is that people feel safe at work because you don't let stereotypes get in the way of, like, how you converse with them, how you define them, how you address them, or how you, maybe address disagreements with them. And then you empower them by giving them challenging work. And this is quite important because sometimes, and seen this in I've heard this in a lot of places, that women, sometimes when they join their teams, they're not given work which is challenging. They're given work which is not challenging. And that is not nice in no uncertain terms. And it's not just for women. Even if a male was given that sort of work, you're not really valuing that person's caliber. You're not valuing the value that that person can bring in a team. So it goes the same for both males and females. And then it happens, and it just unfortunately happens way too much with females. And so you need to consciously, unconsciously think about giving work without differentiating between people. And that includes challenging work. And then the other thing is that nuanced understanding. And this is where a lot of it has to come from team culture. What is very important is that we understand very clearly sometimes when we're talking with the same gender that, okay, we might have different problems and all of these things, we come from different backgrounds, but as soon as we start to think about the other gender or other minorities, all of that goes out of the window sometimes, or it just doesn't click. And that's where it comes to the team culture point of view that, we need to drive nuanced understanding that everyone has their own issues and different people from different genders and minorities, they have to address them in different ways. And sometimes you need to understand from the horse's mouth, like what works and what doesn't work. And listening is a big part of this nuanced understanding. And leaders have to drive this culture. Leaders have to set examples here, how to have nuanced understanding. And that leads to the point that there are no fear of repercussions. There are things that only women face as challenges. And this is, I mean, if I have to be slightly more open, and I'm very happy to have any challenging points to me on this. Given how we are, as how we are biologically, both males and females, they have different sets. They face different challenges. And that's why sometimes I've seen in workplaces that, when somebody has to go on maternity leave, they're certainly seen in different ways. And you might have read LinkedIn posts where, especially in the United States, females have been fired just before they are about to start maternity leave. And that's quite shameful. I mean, you cannot do that. And that's why I feel that this nuanced understanding drives the goal of no fear of repercussions, both from the standpoint of like whatever personal situation you have, as well as from the perspective of work. I mean, you're allowed to fail. And you being a male or a female should not define what the outcome is if you fail. Okay, so there should be full freedom, full safety, and that gives you the mental bandwidth to drive innovation. Creativity does not foster under extreme pressure and fear. Creativity is fostered in an environment where you have the freedom to think on whatever you want to do in the time, at the time that you want to think about it, and wherever you want to think about it. That drives innovation, because then you're not thinking about, oh, I have to be careful about this, I have to be careful about that. And your mental space and your mental bandwidth is limited. The entire idea about being of the leadership should be to free that mental space for the person so that they can do what they want to do at work and achieve their potential. So, so leadership is one part. As I already said, challenging work, smart work, hard work, determination, and team culture. But then it's not just about that. Let's go to the individual side. And this is where I have a small message, and I'll give some examples of what I'm going to show here. There are some X factors every individual has to think about, and then I would like to pass on this message also to my female colleagues here in the call and whoever views this later on, that try to take risks. You might feel that, what if this happens, what if that happens, but we all feel that. Even males feel that. Sure, the world is currently a bit lopsided, but if you don't take risks, you will never know what's in store for you. And to do that, you also need to just be bold. If you feel that a certain idea has merit, stick to your guns. Don't take a no on the very first attempt anybody says that, hey, I don't think this will work, because tech and research is about a lot of disagreements. You will have a lot of disagreements, but if you show in the end that what you propose works, it is incredibly hard to deny the merit of the work. What is hard to deny is if you don't do it, then people can just fluff and say some things. So let your work speak, be bold, and have the self-belief to challenge people. You don't have to think that there are so many males, what should I say? No, you are an individual, the other person is an individual. You are allowed to disagree. You should disagree. You should not accept in the very first point that somebody says that, hey, I think your method will not work. They might have a different point of view. And if you think that your method is well worth the time and effort to try it out and to check, prove it, prove the other person wrong. And if you prove them wrong, why not? If you don't prove them wrong and you are proven wrong yourself, you learn. That's the entire game in tech and research. Either you learn or you prove somebody else wrong and you grow further. Okay? There's growth in both sides, but you need to just not think about what is the gender of the other person, but rather just think about these three aspects: that if you don't take risks, you don't discover what's on the other side. And if you believe in something, then be bold and have that self-belief that at least, if nothing else, then at least you will learn something out of it, and then just try and go for it. Of course, if somebody tells you that it will cost $1 million to make that and we don't have it, then that's another thing. But I mean, generally, we are not in that scenario. And generally, in tech and research, the entire idea is that we face a lot of unsaid barriers. And that's what I'm trying to allude to, that, don't take a no just because somebody said that it won't work. So that's where I wanted to sort of give some examples. I was lucky. It was my first job after my postdoc, and I had to build a team. And I was, going through resumes. And one of the things that was really in my mind was that if there are two people who are at meritocratically at the same level, and if it's a woman or if it's a female or a male, I would want to bet on the female because, and again, remember, the whole idea is meritocracy here. I'm not saying I prefer one over the other, even though they are, there's a big difference. It's a case of like, there has to be merit in somebody getting selected, because otherwise it defeats the entire purpose of women in tech and research, because just preferential hiring will never solve the problem. What will solve the problem is one day when I open my inbox in 20, 30 years to recruit someone, I have 50% of the CVs from males and 50% from females, or 60 from females, 40 from males, or the other way around, but at least the numbers are close enough that I don't even have to think about that. I would give an opportunity to a female as against a male if they are meritocratically at the same level. Okay. So what I would want to say is that both these females, I was really lucky to recruit them, Isma and Nupur, and incredible individuals. I mean, I did not know how much they could achieve, but I knew both of them had the right attitude and the potential. And both of them have overachieved. I mean, to be very honest, I'm lucky and I'm proud that they both were in the team. Nupur, she joined. I think she finished her PhD, and she was from La Sapienza, and she was looking at PhD positions and at job positions. And she started remotely because she was we had to work through all the visa and everything. But even when working, she showed immense curiosity, and she was very diligent even when she was working remotely, which is incredibly hard when you're doing something which is more practical. And she quickly grew into her role, took up independent projects, completed them in short timelines, always smiling in the office and always being very vibrant and bringing that positivity. And at the same moment, um, it also gave a sense of stability to the team, because she had very balanced opinions in dealing with adversity. So whenever we had in startups, you can sometimes get into really, really passionate conversations. And then she was the one who was bringing a sense of, stability, a sense of calmness in the conversation. And then you could all calm down and start speaking to each other in a much more relaxed way. Not that we were fighting, but it was more like, disagreeing in a rather calm way. And now she's leading the tech team inside the same company. I moved to Finland for certain personal reasons, but then now she's leading the same team that I was leading when I was there. So I'm incredibly proud of her for, taking that leap and jump in just about 3 years. And that's a great example of how somebody rises through the ranks very organically and sets an example. And then Isma, she joined as an intern, very diligent, very, very diligent. And, she would be there in the office every day, working hard, almost the first one to arrive, almost the last one to leave on some days, truly imbibing the principles of an employee who's fully devoted to the cause of the startup. And she eventually converted to a full-time, and she had a decent amount of stubbornness, which is quite important when you're in tech and research or anywhere where you are presenting creative ideas, that be slightly stubborn. I mean, don't take a no from somebody to just, completely ignore your own ideas. I mean, somebody says no, you have to think about it. Okay, why did that person say no? For XYZ reasons. But maybe my idea works in this way. Maybe my idea is relevant to this scenario, or XYZ reasons that person's comment is invalid. So try to have that back and forth. And I still remember we had a quite intense discussion on like some topic where she was quite stubborn, and I was happy that she was having that stubbornness. And eventually we both learned a lot through that discussion, and she was able to develop a network planner that is comparable to any other network planner that is out there in the state of the art. And she did it completely on her own, right down from the math to the implementation to the GUI to the marketing part. She led it end to end, and she led many other complex network deployment tasks even after I left. And now currently she's doing her master's in KTH and her master's thesis in Ericsson. So, you know, both these women are just examples of women who embody all of those X factors and more. And what I just tried to do to a certain percentage, and in no means I'm saying that I'm a perfect leader or an example, but I just tried to do was to try and make it just slightly more safer and comfortable for them to just work without thinking about anything else. And that's why I feel that it's very important that both these things work together. When you want to create future leaders, you want to give them that space to innovate and develop ideas which will help them to become future leaders. And that's where what I think is that both these women, these dotted lines are, there are other leaders, there are many who are in this call already. But I had permission from only these two ladies to use their pictures, so I just used them, but don't consider that they are the only two. But these are you all, and these are today's leaders. And then the idea is that they will groom the future leaders. You all will groom the future leaders. And ultimately, the pink dotted line is that we have an oversupply of future leaders. And that's when truly we will have gender equality. We need to go to schools. We need to create impact on the grassroots. Top-down approaches will never solve the problem fully. This presentation is not going to solve the issue. But what I wanted to impress upon all of you today is that it's very, very, very important that those who are the leaders, they start, male and female both, they start pulling in the direction of let's go and give some talks at schools, at university levels, let's interact with the community. And at the same time, let's create a safe space. It's inside a workplace environment and give opportunities equally to everyone without thinking about which gender or minority they belong to, so that everyone can flourish. And let's agree to disagree. Let's agree to hear each other out and be nuanced in our understanding of each other's issues. That's when we can all converge eventually in the long term on like equitable growth, opportunity, and prosperity. And so I just wanted to end this talk with some acknowledgements. Uh, I wanted to thank WiTaR for firstly giving me the opportunity to speak. This is quite a rare opportunity to present my views and to interact with the community. And the entire idea is that I want to learn. I want to get perspectives. I will tell you in a moment why I have that thought, but I want to thank Nupur and Isma because they were very supportive. They gave me permission to their um, share their LinkedIn profiles, their pictures, and so it very, very generous of them to allow me to do that, and also some feedback on the slides as well. The audience for being here today, thank you so much. And then the most important person for me when I was making the slides was my wife. The reason is I, as a male, cannot comprehend fully the challenges that women will face or they face in these environments. So making these slides from my own perspective would have been a great injustice, or would have had at some point some amount of bias that was involved, because, or even if there was not, I would have risked that a lot more. And that's why I wanted to really, really nail it down from the perspective of women. And she was really instrumental in helping me to shape the entire message, to shape the slides that I've presented today. Uh, my first question to her was like, I have so many ideas, how do I start? And she was like, you always talk about Marie Curie, how about her? And I was like, that's a great idea. And yeah, so yeah, and also I've understood a lot of things after being married to her about the challenges that women face, because males cannot generally comprehend these things. And that's why I feel that we need to talk to each other a lot more openly, so that we understand issues a lot better, so that the other side of the aisle actually has a perspective of like, hey, these are challenges and we need to understand them in a different way. There are different perspectives. And when you have those kind of conversations, open conversations, you agree to disagree or you agree altogether, that's when you start to move in the right direction. And yeah, so yeah, thanks to my wife. And again, thank you to everyone who joined this talk.